and Chris Kolker, who are running for HD 38, the State House seat. My name is Kate Eberhard, and I'm part of a local group of activists, Connect a Community, also known as C2C. We work towards informing community members about issues and candidates. A few housekeeping rules. Probably a lot of people have been here to Prince of Peace, but if you haven't been, there's a handicap bathroom right outside this door that you came in, and there's also a men and women's bathroom down in the basement. Emergency exits, front door obviously, and then also this door here on the wall here. If you go out that door, there's exits downstairs if we needed to do that. The other thing too is Prince of Peace donates their space to us. They're very, very generous, and there's a few vases and baskets back there, so if you just want to pop a few bucks in, that's always really appreciated. They're always so happy that they get donations from us. So, and globally, we're facing a lot of very challenging and complex issues. The environment, world relations, and human rights, just to name a few. Our nation is immersed in conflicts and many social issues we've never seen before, and they're very difficult to address. How can a small person like me, how can we feel that we're involved or we can make a change? And one of the ways we can do that is to be involved. And so it can be simply by attending things like this, becoming more informed, volunteering. There's lots of things. And another big piece is asking questions. I think asking questions is a big piece, and that's one of the things that we're going to be doing today, is we're going to be asking questions. So thank you for coming. We're taking action by being here. Please listen with an open mind to issues that you're concerned about. Say hello to the people next to you. Maybe you might find some new friends, maybe someone that actually might be a next door neighbor. Also make sure to turn your phones off. I just heard some phones. That's always good. I'm speaking to myself probably. Our two candidates, Chris Kolker and Melissa, will each have a 2-minute opening, and then they will be asked approximately 10 questions. The responses will be timed. And we understand that we always want to respond by clapping or other things, but if we could just keep the clapping, just don't clap. Just don't clap. It takes away from the candidates, and also our timing is really tight today. Debate is essential. It's very, very important. We will hear different perspectives today, and we may open to a new way of looking at an old problem. Hopefully we'll hear something new and learn from our experience today. Our local and state issues are complex. We must address them collectively with open minds and open hearts. In this way, we can move forward to a bright future for our state, our community, and our families. There'll be a time at the end from 4 to 4:30 to interact with the candidates, so that we just have the questions today, and again, no response. So let us begin. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name's Lenny, and myself and Deborah will be asking the questions today. The first question is a question... Oh, I'm sorry. You both have a 2-minute opening, and I'm going to be quiet.
My name is Melissa Martin, and I am running to turn HD 38 blue again, because I believe the people of this district deserve better than the representation we have now. I was born and raised right here in this district and attended public school here. My parents and grandparents also live in this district. For the last 7 years, I've been running a small business as an educator. I'm also the mother of a very special little boy. I've been involved in politics in this district for decades. I've marched, I've made phone calls, I've canvassed for local candidates like Joe Rice and Robert Bowen. The values that I've learned from my family and the people of this district will guide me in all that I do. Those are the values of compassion, of empathy, of justice, of responsibility both for ourselves and for our neighbors. And if I am given the great opportunity and honor of being your representative in the state legislature, I will prioritize health care, because I do believe that health care is a human right and no one should die or go bankrupt without it. I will also prioritize education because our schools have struggled for too long under the constraints of Tabor. We can and we must do better on behalf of our children. We also need reform, campaign finance reform, urban renewal reform, and gun reforms. It's time we start once again leading with our values and putting people before large corporate profits. Thank you.
My name is Chris Kolker. I am running for HD 38 as a progressive Democrat. I have experience as a certified financial planner, a former high school teacher. I used to teach government, used to teach history, and I believe my qualifications will best represent the values of the Democratic Party and the progressive values that we have here. I've been campaigning since October and meeting and knocking on doors with local community members, people throughout the area, stakeholders, and we've knocked on over 1,000 doors just in the last 2 months. And I've heard from different people and different viewpoints, knowing different things than what I've brought into this situation. You know, my priority is education, but it's not the priority for everyone else. And so that's been the key, is to go out and listen to people and hear what they have to say and what they are worried about. I heard from firefighters who are worried about healthcare and retirement, who are worried about not having enough equipment in the rural areas, not just here. I heard about teachers who want to have smaller class sizes. Teachers who say that they also would like to see an increase in pay and are concerned for their pension. The pension isn't just for teachers at Para, but it's for all state employees. And it was a promise that we made before Social Security came in. And so that is something that we have to keep. I heard from parents who are concerned about the gun laws and the safety of their children, especially in the last 2 weeks. That's been the #1 priority amongst everybody, is to make sure that we use common sense to keep guns out of people's hands that shouldn't have them, and the type of guns that shouldn't be in public. I heard from students who are concerned about mental health care. And I've heard from union leaders who want to make sure that we keep fighting against right-to-work laws. I've been fortunate enough to be endorsed by the local pipe fitters union because of my background as a son of labor. My dad was a UAW member for 33 years, and I will fight to bring union benefits and union rights and keep them up and available to everyone. Because we have a great economy right now, but that economy is inequitable. What unions do is they help bring that up for everyone. And I also believe that with health care, the retirees who have talked to me, that's enough, thank you.
Okay, thank you both very much. The first question is a question about education. You will both have 3 minutes to answer the question, and then you'll have 2 minutes each for follow-up. Colorado ranks near the bottom nationally in terms of the dollars spent per student in our K-12 public schools. What are your thoughts about the changes in funding structure proposed by public school superintendents from across the state?
I'm very much in favor of what the superintendents have proposed. What's amazing about this proposal is that 95% of the superintendents in the state of Colorado have come together and they've made a plan. And they are speaking to us and they are telling us what they need to make our students successful. And I'm listening. And I really hope that the voters of Colorado are also listening. But this is not just a 2-step plan. The first step was the superintendents coming together to make the plan. The next step is going to be voter approval for this plan, because it is going to increase the amount of investment in education, so that requires voter approval. So we need to make sure that the voters understand this proposal and that they back it and support it and understand why it's important. The next step of that process is going to be the bill will go to the legislature. There's actually already a bill in the legislature waiting for the people to vote. So this is where I can come in because I will absolutely support it. We need more funding for education. This provides that. This also provides equity in education. If you look at the countries in the world who are doing best in terms of education, the #1 for the last many years has been Finland. And their priority has been equity in education. And this provides that. It provides more funding for schools that have more special needs, children who are low income, children who are ESL learners, and it provides more funding for those schools that need the extra boost. So it's not just about more money, it's about equity in education, and that breeds success. So I absolutely support it.
I'm on the District Accountability Committee here with Littleton Public Schools, and the majority of my clients are educators. My wife is a school counselor over at Euclid Middle School, so I'm very familiar with this issue. I spent last Wednesday at Great Ed America at their seminar on the new legislation. I actually have a petition that I would like everyone to sign to go over to increase this. There's actually two parts to this. There's the superintendent's bill that will create the formula that would create equity. That formula is based on English language learners, gifted and talented students, free and reduced lunch, special ed, and some other things. That formula is how we will spend all education dollars to get rid of the negative factor that we currently have. The amendment that I have the petition for, that I've already received 64 signatures on, is an amendment to get on the ballot so that we can increase funding. It is to level Gallagher. Gallagher, we will now be at 7% of assessed value for our residential, 25% for our businesses. It will create $1.3 billion in education funding, 20 million more for Littleton Public Schools. There's a lot of things that we can do with that $20 million. This is a personal issue to me because of what I've done, my background in my life. And I'm out there knocking on doors and getting people to sign the petition. That's just to get it on the ballot. So we need your support to do that. So I'm already doing it. The legislative issue, if it doesn't pass this year for the funding formula, well, that will be the first thing I propose if I'm elected, is to make sure that formula that does create equity is passed and presented next year. Thank you.
So I am also an educator, and I've also worked with a lot of special needs students. So one of the things that I've run into in dealing with special needs kids is the term unfunded mandate. There's a lot of unfunded mandates in special education right now, things that we are supposed to be doing for our special needs children that we are not doing because of a lack of funding. So again, this equity is going to make a big difference, and more funding in general is going to make a big difference. So again, this is what we need for our public schools to be successful. We need to listen to these superintendents, follow their lead. In general, we should be listening to educators on public education. Thank you.
Okay. Our second question is about para. You'll have 2 minutes to answer and then 1 minute for a follow-up. The governor, para, and the legislature have put forth different proposals for ensuring continued funding for para. What are your thoughts about the proposals and the funding of para?
You start
Yes.
the first. She started the first one.
She'll be starting for the first 5 questions, and then we'll be switching for the last 5 questions.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure, I can. The governor, para, and the legislature have put forth different proposals for ensuring continued funding for para. What are your thoughts about the proposals and funding of para?
So my 2 priorities on para are to fulfill the promises that we have made to people who are retiring into the para system. The second is to protect education funding. So para, for those of you who aren't as familiar, it covers 566,000 Coloradans for their retirement. It's a $44 billion system that is $32 billion in the hole right now. So clearly we need to make that up so that we can ensure the promises that we've made to the retirees. There are 3 solutions being proposed. There's actually 4. Walker Stapleton has also proposed a solution, but it's very extreme, so it's not one I think we're considering. The legislature also just came out with one. It does include a 401k option. It was a bipartisan solution that just came out on Wednesday. And I am not in favor of anything that includes a 401k option because that's going to draw more money out of the para system and make it less soluble. So that's a non-starter in my book. The governor, I'll go to para. The para board has proposed basically a shared sacrifice between retirees and current employees, as well as the employer, which is essentially the taxpayers in this case. And it's similar to what was done in 2010, but it is a little bit more of an expansion to put more into the system. And then there's also the governor's proposal, which takes the burden off of the taxpayer and puts it a bit more onto the retirees. So I lean towards the para proposal. There's a few proposals by the governor that I would be open to, but I think the para board has the best proposal going forward. Thank you.
Well, I'll disagree, just to disagree. The para board requires full retirement at age 65 for employees after 2020. So if you become an employee of the state pension system after 2020, you won't see full retirement until age 65. The 401k plan is already in place for para. They already have a defined defined contribution plan available. People can put into a 401k or a 457. I've been working with para since 1999. I saw when para was overfunded at 103% and what the state government did to kick that money back to people and the discounts that people received to buy service credit. And I said at the time, it wasn't right what was happening. It was going to lead to bad things down the road. And that is what has happened. So when it comes to para, I'm not happy with either proposal. We do have to look at and study it more. We can wait a year. We can wait 2 years. It's not something that has to be done right away. We have 100,000 retirees in the state that we are relying on para solely. And we have to make sure that that promise is kept. Currently, 8% of a person's pay goes into para, and the employer puts in 20%. That's huge. If we raise pay, that will also raise funding. And that's a big part of the education funding that I'm looking at. So, as a replacement for Social Security, everyone else who has Social Security knows how important that is. Para is important. It's a commitment we must keep. And it's a lot more complicated than simple answers. So those are the things that, in my experience as a certified financial planner, that I will do. We'll look at the returns, we'll look at the investments, and we'll look at the distributions. One other thing that people have not brought up is people in retirement who are in para, the first $20,000 that they make is tax-free on the state. Okay, they do not pay state income taxes on the first $20,000. That should be something to look at, because if we did that, that's 90 million more towards para. Thank you.
You each have 1 minute for follow-up comments.
Well, one thing I think too that we need to consider is one of the reasons that para is so underfunded is because of the recession. We lost $11 billion in 1 year in 2015 because of the recession. So part of the issue with funding right there is the economy. So as our economy grows, the issue will change. And it is solvent for now. I agree that it's not something that has to be dealt with right now specifically, and it might be better off in terms of if we have a bluer legislature in the next couple years, it might be a really good time to look at that.
I agree. Blue legislative body will support para. That's one thing that we can agree and we will guarantee. Okay, Melissa and I are on the same page there. The problems are deep, and we have to look at those. Now, para only lost 20 to 25% during the last major recession in 1 year, when the general stock market lost 50%. So they've done a good job with their investments. We still need to monitor them and find out what's going on. And that's something I feel that I would love to be on the finance committee and dig deep into, because that is what I do for a living. Thank you.
The next question is about climate. You'll each have 2 minutes to answer and 1 minute to follow up. What are your plans for leading Colorado's response to climate change?
So we need to do more in terms of climate. Colorado used to be a leader in climate action and in green energy. We need to be number one again. We need to retake our position there. One of the things I think we need to do is with our climate plan is to be much more specific. Right now, the goal is just to essentially reduce our carbon output, reduce the effects of climate change. We need more specific action. In 2017, there was a bill that was put forth that our current representative voted against that would have made a specific plan. It set specific guidelines and specific dates for reaching those goals. I think another part of that plan needs to be 100% renewable energy as soon as possible. I've seen some plans that are at 2030, some at 2040. Obviously 2030 is preferred. But I think a great way to handle that would be a commission to look at it and look at the plans to see how we're going to make that happen and get it done as soon as possible. Also, we need to look at fracking. We need to look at how to reduce air quality issues around fracking, move it further away from our schools and our communities, because it does put off volatile organic compounds. The NRDC, National Resources Defense Council, put out a study a few years ago that showed that people who live near fracking sites have more health issues, have more birth defects, so we need to deal with that as well. I also support the electric car stations, again, something that our representative voted against. Those need to be in place, and also what they're doing downtown is making biking more accessible. I'd like to see that done here in our city so that that is another way to reduce pollution, and an expansion of our light rail system. Thank you.
I believe there's two things we can't live without: clean water and clean air. And everyone agrees with that. To me, it's a common sense issue. It's nonpartisan to make sure that we're protecting those two things. Now, can we move forward? Absolutely. There's technology out there that will help us do this. I have a client whose son is a professor over at the Colorado School of Mines, and he has a patent through his research through a public and private partnership on a renewable battery that you can put into your home, and that will electrify your home, but it's powered by natural gas. That would take away the reliance on coal, which is a big emission of carbon dioxide, okay? Get rid of the coal-fired plants, and we'll be still relying on clean natural gas. So those are some ideas that we get through public and private research and combining those things. Having deadlines and hard dates on when we should be somewhere, and for this reason, well, are we thinking about the jobs that are lost in those areas, and are we finding ways to make those jobs up? I absolutely agree with Melissa on that, that we need to have clean air, clean water, but we have to use a common sense approach about how we get there. And so those things, and not villainizing anything right away, but looking for the solutions and the common sense solutions to do that are the routes that we need to go. I believe in increasing mass transportation, but again, that is something that we, as a representative, need to listen to our local transportation districts and bring them together to make them more efficient, to make them something that people want to use more often to reduce the carbon dioxide that we get from our cars. Again, if we have electric cars, how are we electrifying them? Natural gas is a great way to do that. Thank you.
You each have 1 minute for follow-up.
I do want to follow up by saying I agree that we need to have a program in place to retrain people in the industries, in the coal and gas industries, to more renewable energy jobs. That's absolutely a priority because we want to keep people working where they live. But renewable energy is a great way to do that because if we put windmills where we currently have gas operations or coal operations, that right there gives somebody a new job that we can retrain them for, and they can stay in their communities and earn money. A lot of the new renewable energy jobs are great high-paying jobs with great benefits. So I agree, they need retraining as well. And we need to keep that in mind going forward.
When it comes down to our regulations here in Colorado, we have some of the toughest regulations now. I know there's a movement to move wells 2,000 feet away. Currently, they're 1,000 feet away from schools. We do have some very tough regulations. I've actually been meeting with people in the oil and gas industry to find out how that affects us, and with environmentalists. We need to bring everyone in together in the same room to talk about this. We cannot talk about these issues in a vacuum. We need to hear from both sides to make sure that we are protecting our environment. So having those conversations and not taking people out of it, but working across with other people, that's something I'm experienced at doing, something that I will continue to do to make sure that we hear from everyone to find those best solutions. Thank you.
Our next question is about opioid addiction. In light of the recent closing of Arapahoe House, what are your plans to address the state and local opioid epidemic? You have 2 minutes to answer this, and there'll be a 1-minute response.
So clearly we're not doing enough to address the opioid crisis right now. There was a recent study done that showed that 67,000 Coloradans said they needed addiction services and were getting nothing. And that study was done before the closing of Arapahoe House, which serviced 5,000 Coloradans. So we can add that to the list of people who need services at this point. There have been several bills, there's several bills in our legislature right now being discussed. There's 5 of them right now. One of them actually has already been kicked out in committee. That one was a needle exchange program in hospitals, which I would have supported because that keeps an opioid epidemic from turning into an HIV epidemic. So that would have been a good start. There's also a bill in the legislature looking at limiting the number of prescription pills given initially. The first, it would be a 7-day prescription and then a 7-day renewal for that prescription. And I would support that as well, rather than giving people large amounts of opioids to begin with, seeing what they need and going from there. There's also another bill in the House looking at putting together a commission and really studying the issue. And again, bringing all stakeholders together. I like this plan because it's a comprehensive plan and it brings in people from all areas, so it's not such a piecemeal suggestion, so we can find solutions that work. But one of the big things we need to do is we need to stop treating addiction like a crime. It's not a crime, it's a health issue. And we need to stop stigmatizing people who have this issue, and we need to start treating them. Some of these people are veterans, they have post-traumatic stress disorder, and they're dealing with pain. Thank you.
One of my first public outings in November, I was over at the South Metro Chamber of Commerce, and I met with our Republican county commissioner afterwards, who confronted me about running against the current incumbent. And through a few things that we talked about, besides being called a communist and saying other things about myself, she told me about her son's opioid addiction and how she was able to get help and get a sympathetic judge who said, is his parents here? And he was an adult at the time. Can his parents help him? Yes. Then he took him to treatment, and they couldn't afford the treatment. This is her words. And the treatment facility let them go, let them stay in and get treatment, and now he's living at home. And I thought, well, that's compassion. Don't you see that's a democratic value? So we have to change the message when it comes to this. Yes, there are things that we have to look at. We have to look at the whole picture. I met with the Juvenile Assessment Center. Molly Baker is one of the people I met with. What they do is get people to the right programs and get kids, especially in schools, to the right programs. They're a nonprofit. Look them up if you haven't heard about them. It's a great program. But get people all on board. And again, working with everyone to say, this is a problem. Do you not see what is happening in your own life and what the values that you're espousing apply? How this can work for everyone? We need to have a bigger heart. In my opinion, love conquers all. And love will conquer this if we get everybody on the same page.
You have an opportunity for a 1-minute response.
It takes love, it also takes funding. So we do need to make it a priority in terms of funding as well. Mental health and addiction services have been sorely underfunded, and that's something we need to prioritize in the legislature as well. Also, one of my good friends, Cindy Fletcher, she's a lawyer, and she works with people who are struggling with addiction. And one of the biggest issues that she has is finding them affordable housing here. So this ties in, all issues are intersectional. So having reasonable housing, fair housing here in this district is something that's sorely needed also to help people with addiction.
Yes, I agree. Funding is everything. And most people here, that have moved here over the last 15, 20 years don't understand how funding is hurt by Tabor. And we're fixing it now piecemeal with Gallagher, with the great schools, thriving communities for education. And it's always going to come back to that. And so we have to look at those programs to say how, by helping fix Gallagher, how will that help fix the other areas that we're underfunding? And that, supporting that one issue will help us fix the funding flaws that we have in our system. It's not perfect, but it's a start. And so when it comes down to working through these programs, again, we have to make good investments. We have to make good investments in how we help people and make sure that we penalize those people that hurt us. The pharmaceutical companies have been way overboard on getting these drugs out. That's what the commissioner told me how her son got started, was OxyContin. We have to make sure those people are held to bear. Thank you.
Thank you. So this next question is question number 5. This will be the last question where you go first, Melissa, and then we'll switch for Chris to go first. This question is about gun control. You'll each have 3 minutes and then 2 minutes to follow up. Do you consider Colorado's current gun laws sufficient and only in need of vigorous enforcement? Or do you think more gun control legislation is needed? And if so, what would it be?
So, first of all, I had to pick my son up from school when it was on lockdown because of the Arapahoe shooting. As a parent, I can tell you that was terrifying. There was no shooter in the school. It was absolutely terrifying. Also, I think the students in Florida have done an exceptional job helping us to understand how this generation is growing up in terror because of gun violence, specifically in schools. So clearly, we are not doing enough. I met with Tom Sullivan, who's running an HD 37. He's a father of a child who died at the Aurora Theater shooting. And we've just discussed this issue as well. And I think it's very clear at this point that we are not doing enough. Colorado has some good measures in place, but we need to go further. I don't see any reason why any civilian needs to have an assault rifle. There's no need for it. And it's very clear that this issue grew exponentially after the federal assault rifle ban expired. So there's a clear connection there. But we also need a very strong blue legislature to deal with this issue, which we do not currently have. So I also want to have other options on the table. Also, because even if we were able to ban all assault rifles, there are still millions of them in circulation that need to be dealt with. So there need to be other ideas on the table. So I would support ERPOs, which are also called red flag laws, which allow people to go into court, and it allows law enforcement to remove weapons from people who have been shown in court to be a danger to themselves and to others. This would have stopped the Florida shooter. That's why it's important. Enforcement is just another area where we can do better. There's a program in Oregon where if someone is convicted of domestic violence and they have been told they cannot possess a weapon, that's usually where it ends. It's up to that person to turn in their weapons, and it usually doesn't happen. So in Oregon, they have a program where officers go out to the home and they collect the weapons. So that's an area of an enforcement that we could improve on as well. I also think another good idea, and this is something, again, they do in Nordic countries, and Finland, where they have a lot of guns and they live peacefully with guns, is they have a tiered system of ownership where handguns and shotguns are more easy to obtain and weapons like AR-15s are much more difficult to obtain. We sort of have this system in place already with machine guns. They are not outlawed everywhere, but because they are regulated so heavily, they're very difficult to get. Thank you.
Yes, I also agree on red flag laws. I'm putting out a statement on that too. It has been something that is important to us, and that I talked to my wife about, who's, as I said before, a school counselor, that people who are a danger to themselves and a danger to others, who knows that better than their family, the people that they live with? And so that has to be something that we need to look into. We need to, I believe, pass so that we have due process and we can save ourselves from that. AR-15s, assault rifles. I come from a family that's hunting, that hunted all of our lives. We don't need AR-15s to go hunt. I mean, those are for hunting people. They're not for hunting animals. And I absolutely am for an assault rifle ban. Machine guns, typical thing, what a machine gun is automatic fire. Those are outlawed. We already do not have them. But we need to be strong with keeping guns out of people's hands that are used for weapons of war. And so I'm absolutely against that. When it comes to background checks, Colorado is one of the best in the nation in background checks. We have strong laws, but it's the states around us that do not. The deputy sheriff that was shot down in Highlands Ranch and killed, the person who shot him got the big magazines and his weapons from Wyoming. So this is not only a local issue, but a national issue that I'm sure many of you are already reaching out and saying things about. We cannot close our borders to those, but we have to enforce what we can here in Colorado. And so those people, I've already signed a pledge. I will not take money from the NRA. I'm for the Second Amendment as a basic right, but I'm also for the First Amendment. And I'm also for the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when I taught government to my students, your rights end at the beginning of someone else's nose. And your right is not to have a gun to kill me. And I strongly believe that, and we have to protect those rights.
You both have 2 minutes to follow up if you'd like.
Okay, this is our sixth question. It's about the growing visibility of the suburban homeless population. You'll each have 3 minutes to answer and then 2 minutes to follow up. The visibility of the homeless population is rising in HD 38. What would you do to address this issue?
First of all, the homeless population comes from two things, in my opinion. One, a lack of mental health services. If you've ever gone out and volunteered like I have and met with people that are homeless, there's a lot of mental health issues that go with that. And we are lacking funding for mental health services. If we increase our funding for mental health services, we can increase the ability to get people help. Our jails and our prisons have become dumping grounds for people in need of mental health. And so we need to reform that system. If we do that and give people treatment and the help that they need, we'll see a less likelihood of homelessness. The other issue is affordable housing. We lack affordable housing. Currently, it's $1,400 is the median to rent a place in Arapahoe County. $1,400. What does it take to make that? If you're making $20 an hour, which seems like a lot of money, it's having a hard time for a family to afford $1,400 for rent. So we need to increase affordable housing. A lot of that has to do with the way our municipalities are approving zoning, and the way we're working with the people who build and present those areas within our local districts.
So I've met with Jovan Melton, who is in House District 3, I believe it is, who puts through the Right to Rest bill or the Homeless Bill of Rights every year. It's going through the legislature again this year. One of the upgrades to that legislation this year is that they're asking that before a citation is ever written, that they offer services, that the officers offer services. And if there are no services available, then they cannot write the citation. So I believe in a homeless bill of rights. It's again another issue where we have to stop criminalizing homelessness. It's not a crime. It generally goes along with mental illness, just and poverty. These again are veterans, people suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, people suffering from mental health issues. So we need to start treating it as such. What generally happens is a citation is written. The homeless person is unable to pay it, so they don't go to court. So then what happens? They get put in jail, and we as taxpayers pay that bill. Or if something happens to them and they're having a mental health crisis, they get put in a regular hospital, so we pay those bills as well. There was a DU study done recently that showed that it is actually less expensive to pay to house the chronically homeless than it is to continue putting them in jail and putting them in emergency rooms. This has been successfully done in other cities, and it's a much better use of taxpayer money than it is to create temporary solutions like homeless shelters or even food banks, that sort of thing. You give them a place to live, and it produces better outcomes. So I think that's the best way to go. We put our tax money towards actually solving the problem. And I agree as well, we need more affordable housing in this district. That's a big issue here. A lot of the homelessness has been pushed into the suburbs because of some of the strict laws against urban camping and against essentially homelessness that's in Denver right now. So some of the issue has been pushed into the suburbs. So now we are dealing with it more than we were before. Also, the high cost of living is adding to the problem as well. So we need an actual solution, and I believe that's housing the homeless. Thank you.
You each have 2 minutes for a response.
Thank you. Again, housing the homeless is very important, along with the mental health issues. I've seen that we have a lot of open space, that especially over there on Santa Fe, that if you've been driven down Santa Fe lately, you've seen people camping out down there, and it is becoming an issue. What can we do as a state? What can we do as a state in the state capital? Well, we can bring the local communities together. Denver is pushing people out to Littleton, to the other areas. We have to be a voice for these people. We have to say that we at the state level see this not as a local problem, but as a statewide problem. And we have to use our influence to be able to do that, to bring everyone together to find those solutions.
One of the other advantages to offering more low-income housing right here in our district is right now it's difficult for our kids to live here where their family support is while they're going to college or while they're in an entry-level position or while they're raising young children. So there's other reasons to bring it in, not just for homeless or drug addiction issues. It's for our own families that we need affordable housing right here in our district. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is regarding infrastructure and transportation. You'll each have 2 minutes and a minute to follow up. With Colorado's transportation infrastructure in dire need of repairs and updates, how do you propose funding these needs? And how would you do that without further reducing our already limited education funding?
Well, the last part of that question I've answered with the fix to Gallagher, with the petition. If we fix Gallagher, we have a big piece of the pie. About 36% of funding in the state goes to education. If we increase funding for education, that pie then will become bigger, and we'll be able to use the rest of it towards transportation issues. We'll be able to use some of that money that we currently use towards it for education in funding transportation. I know there is a amendment being proposed to get on the ballot again this fall to fix transportation funding. Again, all goes back to Tabor. We're doing this stuff piecemeal. We need to get the word out that we have to come up with a coordinated plan. The transportation districts are in charge of local transportation. What's most important to us is, are we fixing things that are concerning public safety? Are we supporting our CDOT, the Colorado Department of Transportation to fix the public safety issues. And are we making sense about that? Are we using our common sense to make sure that, hey, should we just add another lane going up to the mountains, or should we add another lane here? Or are we doing a holistic approach? How are we getting people to mass transportation? I met with a person when I was out knocking on doors. She was 80 years old, and she said, Chris, I have a hard time just getting to the bus stop. I can do it, but I'm not disabled, so we need to make sure that she understands the systems that are available to her. She made a suggestion, well, how come we don't have some kind of a shuttle bus to get me to the bus stop? Well, a lot more problems go along with that, but it's an idea to think about. It's an idea to think about how can she get a hold of RTD, which I know RTD offers those services. Does she even know about those? So part of the education. But transportation is a huge thing that spreads among many districts who have different viewpoints. And again, just like with housing, we have to bring those transportation districts together.
So clearly we need investment in transportation, and transportation is all about funding. And transportation has traditionally had its own funding stream. And what we generally do is we get community input from each area to find out what each community needs, and we put a price tag on each of those infrastructure projects, and we put that together in a package, and we bring that to the people to vote on. We have voted in favor of those tax increases in the past, and it is a tax increase. It's a temporary tax increase, but we take out bonds on those loans, and the tax increase is only in effect until those bonds are paid off. And again, we need to educate the public in terms of what is needed in terms of infrastructure, but when they can see a list of what is needed in their own communities, a lot of people are aware of the infrastructure issues within their own communities. So when they see a list of that and they see the cost of it, then most people will vote in favor of that tax increase because it is temporary and it's needed. Infrastructure funding is needed. We cannot allow our infrastructure to crumble. One of the things that we're taking a look at right now is lead in our schools' piping systems. It's something that we they investigated in Jefferson County, and they're doing it right now in Littleton. And I think if people are aware that our old infrastructure is putting lead into our water, that will be a priority, and we will be able to get funding for that. Thank you.
You have 1 minute.
When it comes to transportation at the state level, it's state highways. When we talk about the cities that we live in, that's the city council. So we have to get to them. Now, the state may have more funding for those bigger transportation projects, but maybe we can look at grant funding to the cities. I went to a Centennial City Council meeting, and they talked about $1 million just to build sidewalks along Arapahoe Road. So when it comes to that local issue, there's only so much we can do at the state level. If we increase our funding, we can also maybe increase the grant program to our cities. So we make sure that those cities are taking care of those local projects.
So my parents live up in the mountains, and we were just talking about this today, how traffic going up to the mountains is just horrible, and what can we do about it? And one of the things that we're looking at is expanding light rail outside of the metro area. And there's already track there, there's a train that runs up the mountain as well, but we need something that follows I-70. So in terms of transportation projects like that, that is a state project that we could look at that would not only improve infrastructure, but also improve environment, because we'll have fewer cars on the road, less smog, less traffic. That's good for everyone. Thank you.
Our next question is around the divisiveness in our legislature. Given the current political climate, how will you work with your Republican colleagues in the legislature? Oh, and you have 2 minutes to answer this, and we don't have time allotted for a follow-up.
I grew up a family of Democrats, but then also a bunch of Republicans in my family. So I've grown up with this as an issue. How do we work together? We make issues nonpartisan. We find an issue, like I believe education is a nonpartisan issue, and we look for common ground. The people in rural areas right now who tend to be Republican are seeing the direct impacts of Tabor and Gallagher on their hospitals, on their first responders. And we find a way to reach out and say, listen, you see what's happening, you see how it's hurting your local community. What can we do to work together? I founded a group called 100 Men Who Care. There's two groups. There's 100 Women Who Care and 100 Men Who Care. Nationally. I founded a local chapter of that. It's a group that we get together quarterly to go and learn about local charities. And then we decide one charity to donate to, and we all donate $100 to that charity. The goal is to raise $10,000 a quarter for different charities. Everyone in this group I brought in has a different political viewpoint. There are 50% Republicans, 50% Democrats. But you know what? We all have a common goal, which is to do good in our local communities. And I can reach out to those people. I've done it in my financial planning practice, and I also did it as an educator. When I taught high school, the students did not know if I was a Democrat or a Republican, because I made them think about the issues on both sides. And that's how you deal with other people of other viewpoints. Make it see it from a different side. Make them use common sense and reason. So that's how I will work to reduce divisiveness in the state legislature. Find common ground. Thank you.
So I have several life experiences that have helped me with this. The main one being that I work with infants and toddlers. So I'm fairly sure I'm qualified to work with state legislators. It's an ongoing battle. Also, I did grow up in a family that is split down the middle. Most of the people who raised me are very liberal, but some of the people in my family, including my father, are very conservative. I still have a very close relationship with my father, and even though he and I don't always agree, but we're able, again, to find common ground. We can talk about some very contentious issues, and always what I seek to do with him is to find common ground with him, and we always do. And so that's something I've grown up being very able to do. Also, I think having a child with special needs has really cemented this for me, because I've had to look past some of the emotional parts of the issue and of the struggle to view the end goal and keep that end goal always in mind when dealing with my son. So I think that's really helped me as well to work towards a goal without getting mired down in the specifics of it. So I feel very prepared to work across the aisle. I'm the kind of person who looks for solutions, and especially, and again talking about the gun issue, I am not going to allow children to die because we can't get the exact bill that we want. I am going to make sure we do something to make a change, and that will often involve reaching across the aisle and finding where we can compromise, because we need to get it done.
The next question is about redistricting. You'll each have 2 minutes for the question and then a minute for follow-up. How would you approach redistricting, and what's the most nonpartisan way to approach this?
When I taught high school government, this was one of the first things we talked about was gerrymandering and the old school map that you saw looked like a snake, and how that's unfair. And we still see it today. North Carolina had it going on. We have it in different areas. I've been for using different technology to make sure that they were equal. I think one of the reasons we have divisiveness is because of gerrymandering, because we have safe areas and for one party over the other, so that party can then elect somebody who won't listen to the other side, because they don't have to. So when it comes to redistricting, we already have it set up in our legislation based on the Constitution, or what we have to do in 2020 after we get the census. The key is, do we listen to each side and we look for districts that are fair? And we have to do that to make sure that we reduce this divisive culture that we have. But When it comes down to, do we have one district that goes all the way from Wyoming to New Mexico? Is that a district that is fair, or a district has half in Denver and half out on the Eastern Plains? Is the Eastern Plains going to get represented? They're not, because where's the money going to go in for the election? It's going to come from Denver. So those are complicated issues, and there's no easy answer to this. The best answer is to try to make them all fair and equal, and bring all parties to the table, and make sure that people in a district that they're being represented have the same values. Denver is going to have a different value than out on the Eastern Plains. So it's a complicated issue. It's not simple. The easiest answer to say is go 50-50, and make sure that we find that, but that's going to make districts that might be unworkable. So again, the divisiveness comes from gerrymandering, and keep everyone involved in the process. Thank you.
So Colorado is one of the least gerrymandered states. We don't have as much of an issue here as they do in some other states. But it is still an issue. This district was gerrymandered in 2010 to be a Republican district, so clearly we're dealing with it. But I agree that we need to take the politics out of it and the parties out of it. So that is a way, I agree, where technology should be used to draw the fairest and least partisan divides in each district. Believe it or not, in California, they actually use a system there that is very nonpartisan, and it makes the districts more competitive. It makes each side have to come more to the middle, so it stops extremism. And that's what's happening because of gerrymandering in our country. There's so much more extremism because each party has to speak to the farthest ends of its party. Whereas in those districts, they're speaking to the middle. So each party comes more to the middle. So I agree. I think the fairest way to do it is take people out of it, use technology, come up with very balanced districts, and you're going to see more competitive races, and we're going to see much less extremism and partisanship in our country. Thank you.
You both have a minute for follow-up if you'd like.
Okay, our next question is about campaign funding. You'll have 2 minutes to respond, and there's not an opportunity for additional comments. How is your campaign funded? And in your opinion, what are the pros and cons related to campaign finance reform?
My campaign's funded by over 100 individual donors so far. I have not received any political education committee endorsements or money from small donor committees at this time. I would accept it if it came in, okay? But it's not there. In Colorado, you can only give as an individual $400 as an individual. But if you give to a small donor or a political education committee, you can give and then you can support a candidate just like a PAC. I have not received that money or those endorsements. So I'm truly out there talking to individuals. I've knocked on over 1,000 doors. I've received over 100 different campaign contributions from individuals, and a little of my own money, not a lot. You can see in the Tracer reports that we're working there. We're raising a family. It's pretty hard to donate to a campaign and raise the family. I'm sure Melissa has the exact same issue. So it's something that it relies on that grassroots and relies on individuals. As it comes to reform, in the local level, what really needs to be reformed is school board campaign finance. They can pretty much get unlimited funds, and we saw that in Douglas County. But when it comes to the state, we have specific rules and specific regulations to make sure that individuals can only donate so much. You can only get so much from small donor committees. So when it comes to that right now, it's not like the big money is coming in to our state party and our state races.
So yes, my campaign is also being funded by individuals. We do have a small committee that has donated to us, but we're not taking any special interest money, PAC money, any of that. But I do believe that we need to go further in terms of campaign finance reform in this state. Also, some of the county positions can take unlimited funds as well. But also, we see a lot of money. If you look in the governor's race right now, there's millions of dollars going into those campaigns. It's ridiculous, and it drowns out the voice of the people. Because when you're getting that amount of money, it's the money that motivates rather than the individuals that have given. So I think we need to do more. And one of the things that we can do, Citizens United has told us that money is speech. And so until that changes, we have to work within those guidelines, and hopefully that will change soon. Because if money is speech, then speech is not free. So one of the things that we can do is we are not limited in terms of regulating campaign finance. We can't say how much can be spent, can be given and donated, but we can say how much can be spent. So if we can regulate what is spent by campaigns and by outside interests, that's another way that we can keep the costs of campaigns down in the state. So it's an innovative idea that I think we should consider, because the amount that's spent on campaigns is obscene. It should be spent on schools. It should be spent on infrastructure. It shouldn't be spent on getting people elected. So that's one way that we can bring those costs down. Thank you.
Okay. Our last question. We don't. Did you want to? Yeah, we'll give you both a minute. Yeah.
Campaign finance reform is important because I don't believe a corporation is an individual. Absolutely not. But I also believe that there should be some kind of transparency. On every one of my campaign materials, it says who pays for my material. Paid for by my campaign. And that needs to be done. It's not always required here in Colorado, but it needs to be done. So we know if there's a special interest group out there paying for someone else's campaign material. So that's in the legislature. When it comes to the governor's race, yes, definitely. I do not like seeing people with $1 million being able to control running for governor. Already our governors have over $1 million. 3 of them, I think, have over $1 million in their funds. And that's scary to me. Where's that money coming from? So absolutely agree with that. That's something that should be looked at. Again, and on a local level, as I said before, we saw in Douglas County. I'd like to make sure that, again, promote that with the local, school board, so that isn't overfunded in other places. We're lucky here in Littleton. We could be worse off.
Yeah, I agree in terms of transparency. That was another part that I wanted to cover. Was there so much dark money that comes into campaigns that you don't know where it's coming from, and they come up with these great names like Citizens for Freedom or whatever it is, but we need to know the people behind those donations. So there needs to be a lot more transparency in campaign finance. That would be a big start. And also in like a lot of the people get money from DFER and that sort of thing. We need to know where that money's coming from. So more transparency is also really important.
Okay, the last question. Both of you are obviously very informed and very passionate and care very much about your communities. Why are you the better candidate to defeat Susan Beckman in November? You each have 3 minutes and 2 minutes for follow-up.
I believe I'm the better candidate, and this is hard because I think we're both good candidates, okay? I really do. I think Melissa's great too. But my qualifications go back to being an educator, being a licensed teacher in school districts where I had to deal with everyday issues in this classroom. I had to deal with the teachers union, the parents. I had to deal with the funding that we were receiving and with the state pension plan that I was involved in. And now, with the new things that are coming out, especially now that teachers are being required to justify their position, they are now spending more time, instead of teaching, justifying why they're a good teacher. Well, I'm very aware of those issues. I sit on the District Accountability Committee. That's the Littleton Public Schools District Accountability Committee. I learn all about what we're doing and also have an input into what we can do to help kids and help students who are looking for career technical education. Littleton right now is starting to look at going beyond the 4-year model for high school. How can we reach out to kids who have quit school and bring them back into the fold? They still have a right to get an education. You know, we can go 5, 6, or 7 years to college, but why are we limiting kids to only 4 years in high school? You know, Littleton is doing a great job of allowing kids to get college credits while still in high school. But they're not just college credits for a 4-year school to get a 4-year degree, but college credits allow them to get a job right away, maybe through the community college program. I've been involved with the apprenticeship programs with the different unions that are around in the area, and how we can promote those apprenticeship programs so kids can get out right away and get to work. Not every kid's going to go to a 4-year college. I'm a certified financial planner. I have a detailed understanding of the state pension plan and of finance and of budgets. You know, we do have extra money every year in our budget, and it doesn't necessarily mean we have to go and spend it. What are we spending our money to create the best investment? To me, there's no better investment than investing in education. We get a bigger return for every dollar than investing in our children. So what can we do when we're looking at the appropriations? I'd love to be on the appropriations committee so that we can take a look at how we're spending our money and make sure that it is something that isn't just being to plug a hole in a dam like the little Dutch boy, but actually there's going to create a return for our economy. So that's why I believe that I am a qualified candidate for this position.
It is always a good dilemma when you have two good candidates. And I appreciate Chris as well. I think the reason that I am the best candidate for this district is because I am a daughter of this district. I was born and raised here. I attended public schools here. I know this district. I know the people of this district. I haven't been talking to the people of this district for months. I've been talking to them for the 44 years of my life. I know the people here, and I know the character of this district. I've also been in politics in this district for a very long time. My family is very involved in politics. I grew up with NPR on the radio, the local programs on the radio. So I'm very familiar with the local issues of this community as well. In terms of our background and our experience, we have very similar experience. I'm also an educator. I just work with the little ones. But I also run a small business, so I also am very familiar with budgets and how to run a business and what goes into that and the time and effort that goes into that as well. One of the reasons that I'm very focused on special education is not just because of my own child, but because working with kids at this level, I see children coming in with high needs who are not being addressed. And this is an area where I feel like I have a special insight to what's going on, because there's not very much information given at that level to the educators to be able to deal with kids with special needs, because some of them haven't even been diagnosed at this age. We're talking about infants and toddlers. So I have a unique perspective going in there, but I am an educator. I have ongoing education every year, and I'm running my small business as well. So I feel that that's the reason I can connect with this community on a level that's unique, because I've been here for so long. My family has been here for a long time. My father grew up on a ranch just outside of County Line Road. My mother, my grandparents bought a home in Centennial for $9,000 and sold it for about $250,000. The house that I grew up in was on Fremont Street and Broadway. And behind our home was nothing. It was a field. I have seen this community grow and change, and I have grown and changed with it. In terms of my experience and my qualifications, I feel they're very similar, but I feel that I have the background and the knowledge of this community to best represent it. Thank you.
No, I wasn't born here. But I invested here. My 5-year-old goes to Sandburg Elementary. My wife works in Littleton Public Schools. My clients are here. I've been working here since 1999 with people. Half the population of this state comes from somewhere else. Okay? So that's why I'm out knocking on doors. I've spent since November so much time trying to meet everybody in this district, and I will continue to do that. I will knock on doors, I will call people, I will go where needed. And I can't tell you the number of events I've been at right now to go out and meet people here. Because my issues aren't the same issues as everyone else. And our issues change day to day. You know, before the Parkland shooting, no one, not one person, talked about gun control when I was knocking on doors. Now it's the #1 issue. So whether you're from here or moved here, those issues change. And we need to be responsive to that, and we need to be ready to listen and to get out and meet people. That's why I believe I'm the best candidate for this. Thank you.
One thing that also, having come from here, has been an advantage to me is that I already knew a lot of people in this district. I already knew a lot of the people who have been involved in politics in this district for a long time, and I already had relationships with them. So right now what I'm working on is building a winning coalition in this district between people who have been doing the work in the party and between a lot of new people. I'm bringing in a lot of new people into politics who have never been involved before. And I feel that's a winning combination in this district because we lean red, but we have a lot of unaffiliateds who haven't been engaged before. And I'm out there as well, meeting people, calling people, talking to people, and bringing together this coalition that will be able to unseat the current representative. Thank you.
So that was our final question, but we did leave time for closing remarks. Each have 2 minutes for closing remarks. You go ahead.
It's quite a campaign. I've never run for office before, and learning a lot of things here. And we make mistakes, and we move on, and we learn from them, and we do our best. What I'm willing to do is bring unity. To bring unity, as Melissa said, to a lot of the unaffiliates that are here. As of November, we had 16,000 registered Democrats, 22,000 registered Republicans, and 20,000 registered unaffiliates. In the last election, we did not come close to winning that election in HD 38. But Michael Bennet won this district. Hillary Clinton won this district. We have to reach out and not be divisive and accept people from other areas and say, listen, I am here to listen to your issues, and I am going to work for you, and I'm going to spend time, and I'm going to do what it needs to do what I need to do, spend those long hours working hard to represent you. Do you value what I value? If not, I'm going to listen. And I'm going to hear that and bring it together and bring people together who have different values so that we can get things done. We've talked about divisiveness a couple times already. I believe I'm the person that can bring us together with the experiences that I have as a certified financial planner, working with Republicans and Democrats on their finances, working in a charitable group, different viewpoints, but we have a common goal, and working as an educator, as a high school teacher. One thing I can promise you is that I will always listen. Thank you.
So I'm running to defend our democratic values. I believe we need to build a big, beautiful blue wall around our state in order to resist the efforts of the federal government to overturn all of the progress that we have made. The blue wave is coming, and this wave requires a new kind of leadership. I've watched, like many of you have, as the blue waves and the pink waves have swept across this nation, flipping red seats to blue. We've also watched as those who have been silenced for so long are standing up and finding their voices again and finding their power, and I am one of them. We are beginning to realize what we can accomplish when we work together, stand up, speak out, and put aside our differences to work for common goals. The blue wave is coming, and it is powered by pink cat hats. We need leadership in this district who understands these rising forces and can harness them and focus them towards positive change. I am that leader because I am part of these rising forces. The time for change is now. So today I'm not just going to ask for your support or your vote, though I want them both, and I will continue to work hard to earn them. I'm also going to ask you for your voice and your courage. I'm going to ask that you join me in my campaign. I need your time, your talents, your efforts, and your energy to help me right this ship. Together, the waves we make today will change the course for HD 38, our state, and our nation. The time is now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chris and Melissa. I think it was very eye-opening to me. And Cassandra's back there holding up the jar for donations for the church. So let's make sure we do that. And this is a time for all of us to be involved. You know, Melissa just brought that up. Chris brought it up about listening and action on all of our parts. And that's different for everyone. Everyone's got, you know, some people like knocking on doors, some people like small groups of people, but a big part is being involved, and that can be, a big part is voting. Another one is volunteering, you know, in your local precinct. Find out what's going on. HD 38 has a great website, and there's always great information about that, about what's going on. And the reason we do it is because we care. We care about each other, we care about our families, we care about our country. And we're at a very important time right now that we do need to speak out and we do need to stay involved. So thank you for coming, and now I'll offer a round of applause. Oh, one thing, what?
Could I co-op for just 1 second?
Sure.
Hi everybody, I'm with HD 38. Hi guys, you did an awesome job. I just want to let anybody who's inspired to volunteer and wondering what to do know that there's a wonderful campaign called People to People that you probably know about, Kate, that's going on right now. And it's a way to very gently engage with unaffiliated voters. And it's basically a campaign where neighbors are going and knocking on the doors of other neighbors, just asking one question. You know, what's most important to you? And then going on their merry way. And tomorrow there's a training at Coble Library at 4:30 for anybody who's interested. So, and you probably might have all gotten an email about it, but if you haven't, just want to let you know.
Thanks, Jody. So, our round of applause.